Welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, President Biden rejects calls to drop out of the race.
Meanwhile, the new Republican platform sparks backlash from pro-life voters.
And a Russian missile strike kills dozens of people in Ukraine. All right, but first we begin our show with the latest on President Biden, who is now digging in his heels as he tries to ride out pressure to end his campaign amid growing concerns about his mental acuity. Biden called into MSNBC's Morning Joe yesterday, defiantly declaring he has no plans to leave the race, while also accusing the so-called party elites of trying to force him out.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party, who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce for president. Challenge me at the convention.
Biden maintains he still has the support of Democrat voters, while also asserting he still is the best candidate to beat Donald Trump.
All the data shows that the average Democrat out there who voted, 14 million of them that voted for me, still want me to be the nominee, number one. Number two, the idea that Donald Trump has gained in any substantial way, has his argument to why he should be president is anywhere convincing than it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. It's just not there.
That same day, Biden sent a rather fiery letter to congressional Democrats saying, quote, "The question of how to move forward has been well aired for over a week now, and it's time for it to end." Biden said he's, quote, "firmly committed to staying in this race, to running this race to the end, and to beating Donald Trump."
Meanwhile, Democrats are still divided over Biden's political future. Yesterday, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that they still support the president despite his debate performance. Here's Jeffries on that.
I made clear publicly the day after the debate that I support President Joe Biden and the Democratic ticket. My position has not changed.
But that's Biden and the Democratic ticket. Do you support Biden on the ticket or just Biden and whatever the ticket is?
Same answer.
But not every Democrat agrees. According to The Hill, there are now 6 Democrat lawmakers who have taken a public stance against nominating Biden for a second term. When Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin was asked if Biden would be the nominee, Durbin only said, "We'll see." Nonetheless, there are still plenty of lawmakers who support Biden. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of them.
I had spoken to the president over the weekend. I have spoken with him extensively. He made clear then, and he has made clear since, that he is in this race. The matter is closed. He had reiterated that this morning. He has reiterated that to the public. Joe Biden is our nominee. He is not leaving this race. He is in this race, and I support him.
But at the same time, some Democrat activists are already mobilizing against the president with the Pass the Torch campaign. Their website collects signatures targeting Democrat congressional members and the DNC, urging them to select a new presidential candidate. This all comes as Democrats met behind closed doors today to discuss Biden's potential in the upcoming election.
And we'll be sure to following that as the more details come out. Elsewhere, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was in the hot seat yesterday, being grilled by reporters over new reports saying a Parkinson's specialist named Dr. Kevin Kennard visited the White House 8 times since July of 2023. And while Jean-Pierre refused to give any names or even comment on Kennard's visits, she did confirm that President Biden has seen a neurologist 3 times as part of his annual physicals.
There are thousands of military personnel who come onto this White House. Many of them get the care from the White House medical unit. And so I cannot speak to every person because there's actually a security reasons to protect their privacy. We respect and protecting people's privacy, so do not want to share. I'm not going to share people's names from here. But the president, I can tell you, has seen a neurologist 3 times as it's connected to a physical that he gets every year that we provide.
But her answer wasn't exactly satisfying for some reporters. For example, CBS News correspondent Ed O'Keefe, he quickly grew rather frustrated with Jean-Pierre. He began shouting at her for refusing to answer questions about Dr. Kennard, even though his name appeared publicly in the White House visitor logs. Here's just a piece of that rather tense exchange.
It's a very basic, direct question.
Wait, hold on. Wait a second.
Eight times, or at least once, in regards to the president specifically.
Hold on a second.
That's what you should be able to answer by this point.
We cannot share names.
You cannot share others he would have met with.
We cannot.
You can share names in regards to if someone came here in regards to the president.
We cannot share names of specialists broadly, from a dermatologist to a neurologist. We cannot share names. There are security reasons. We have to protect. I understand that. I hear you.
It's right there for anyone to see.
Ed, I hear you.
Jean-Pierre called O'Keefe's behavior there not acceptable and inappropriate. She also later insisted that President Biden is not being treated for Parkinson's in any way, but not everyone is so sure about that. Neurologist and lifelong Democrat Dr. Tom Pitts, he says, at least from what he can tell, Biden has all the hallmarks of the disease.
He has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, oh, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area. You notice when he turns, it's kind of end block turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinson's is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold hypophonia. A small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
And speaking of Biden, it looks like the White House has indirectly kept track of Biden's gradual mental decline in the past year. The Daily Wire reports that transcripts show 51 speaking error corrections in Biden's speeches in May alone. In 2023, the president misspoke 3 out of every 10,000 words. During a 4th of July speech last week, Biden mixed up election years, saying he would beat Trump again in 2020.
Well, guess what? They're trying to push me out of the race. Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm staying in the race. I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020.
The president also routinely mixes up large numbers. In 2023, he said the federal deficit was $7 billion instead of $1 trillion. Biden also claimed that he forgave debt for 136 million people, when in reality he only forgave 3.6 million. Other gaffes included mixing up words. In March, he said, quote, "The threat to democracy must be defended instead of defeated." He also made several comical remarks. In April, he said, quote, "We can't be trusted," when he meant to say he can't be trusted, likely referring to Trump. According to the Daily Wire, these and many other mistakes point to an individual who simply reads a teleprompter without thinking.
And you looked at that report in more detail than I did, but am I right that these have been increasing as well over time?
Yes, definitely. Especially in the past, from 23 to 2024, these incidents are unfortunately going up.
And it's something that you can sadly just see in public as well.
Yes,
Meanwhile, on the heels of that report, congressional Republicans are now calling out Democrats as well as the media for covering up President Biden's health issues. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Democrats need to be held accountable for misleading the public.
Democrats, our colleagues, for 3.5 years have been covering up this glaring problem. The staff in the White House have been covering it up, and so have the Democrats in Congress. Most of the Americans, people understand that Joe Biden is not fit for that office, and it's a terrible thing. The Democrats have misled us, and they need to be held accountable for that.
Representative Elise Stefanik labeled the effort as one of the greatest media cover-ups in American history, and she said Republicans, meanwhile, have been looking into the situation since day one.
For the last 3.5 years, House Republicans and the American people have been demanding details about Joe Biden's mental and physical decline. But every time we raise these legitimate concerns, far-left Democrats and their loyal stenographers in the mainstream media rushed to Biden's defense, claiming that the clearly diminished Joe Biden was as sharp as ever and accusing us of peddling conspiracy theories. The cover-up is over and accountability is here.
All right, and shifting away from Biden, but still keeping with the Republicans here, the RNC has officially released its new platform for the 2024 election. We go to FISM's Ian Patrick for the details.
The Republican Party has officially adopted its platform for 2024, and it's remarkably similar to that of former President Donald Trump. On Monday, the Republican National Convention unveiled its 2024 platform, aptly titled, Make America Great Again. The goal, as RNC chairs Michael Whatley and Lara Trump say in a statement, is to, quote, be a nation based on truth, justice, and common sense. As such, the platform it adopts takes much of Trump's stances regarding specific political and social issues. For the border crisis, Republicans want to complete the border wall and to, quote, deport the millions of illegal migrants who Joe Biden has deliberately encouraged to invade our country. The platform specifically prioritizes deporting the most dangerous criminals while working with police on the matter wherever possible. For the economy, Republicans want to tamp down on inflation. It also calls for Republicans to once again become, quote, the party of industry, manufacturing, infrastructure, and workers. The platform also wants to reassert American dominance in the energy market, calling for the nation to drill, baby, drill, and to bring back other energy policies from the Trump administration. Other notable policy adoptions include large tax cuts for workers, restoring world peace through American military strength, and pushing back against transgender policies in schools and sports. A statement from Trump's campaign team lauded the RNC for adopting Trump's many policies. According to Trump campaign senior advisors Chris Lasivita and Susie Wiles, this platform articulates Trump's American First principles well. They say, quote, his 2024 Republican Party platform is a bold roadmap that will undo the devastating damage that Joe Biden's far-left policies have done to this country, power President Trump to a historic victory in November, and make America great again. Now, despite overwhelming agreement on many, if not all, of these policies, that of abortion is still causing some turmoil, especially among pro-lifers. The new RNC policy specifies that it will not pursue a federal ban on abortion, but will instead leave it to the state's discretion. It reads, quote, we proudly stand for families and life. We believe that the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States guarantees that no person can be denied life or liberty without due process, and that the states are, therefore, free to pass laws protecting those rights. After 51 years, because of us, that power has been given to the states and to a vote of the people. We will oppose late-term abortion while supporting mothers and policies that advance prenatal care, access to birth control, and IVF. Now, although pro-life groups are satisfied to see that Republicans are still committed to the cause of protecting life, some organizations and individuals believe that this policy does not go far enough. And that includes Catholic Vote President Brian Birch, who said the policy really appears to be more of an attempt to try and deny accusations that the Republicans want to outright ban all forms of birth control rather than a firm pro-life stance, as many were hoping it would be. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
All right, thanks for breaking all that down for us, Ian. Meanwhile, up next, a Russian missile strike kills dozens of people at a hospital in Ukraine. We'll get to the details on that tragedy and more after this short break.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Do you know what you are supporting when you purchase mutual funds and stocks? Think about it. When you invest in a company, you make a decision to support the things that that company supports. And it may not be things that you agree with. Financial Issues is a ministry teaching people like you how to invest biblically, responsibly, keeping your investments clear of companies that may support an ungodly agenda. Learn more by going to financialissues.org. Financialissues.org.
But I felt very comfortable in that decision because I found a lot of support. Like everyone here, like always made sure like keep in contact with me. This is what ultimately changed my decision. You know, knowing that I had all this support that I didn't know I had. Now that he's here and he's 4 months old, like I look at him and I honestly like it just makes me want to cry. Like
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We move away now from politics to some international coverage. We're going to begin now with that tragic strike in Ukraine. At least 41 people are now dead after a Russian missile attack struck a major children's hospital in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. It comes as yesterday Russia launched a rare daytime attack on cities across Ukraine, with officials calling the attack on Kyiv itself one of the largest in the war to date. Russia claims it was carrying out strikes on defense industry targets and aviation bases in Ukraine and has repeatedly denied targeting civilians in the process. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he held a moment of silence following the attack and is now vowing to respond.
Meanwhile, Hamas says that Israel is jeopardizing negotiations by advancing deeper into Gaza City. Thousands of Palestinians fled the area after receiving an evacuation warning from Israeli forces who are hunting down regrouped militants in the region's largest city. The Israeli military reports eliminating over 150 terrorists since they resumed operations in the city a week ago. They also destroyed a branch tunnel system that contained weapons and intelligence documents. But a top Hamas leader warns there will be catastrophic consequences if Israel continues raids, saying they will be responsible for a breakdown in negotiations. Other gaps remained between the two sides. Notably, the militants want to choose which high-profile prisoners Israel releases as part of the deal.
Meanwhile, shifting to Europe, where French President Emmanuel Macron has rejected the resignation of Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, saying he's still needed to ensure the stability of the country. The French government is currently in a deadlock following Sunday's election, which split the legislature in such a way that now no faction has enough members to officially form a government. Attal had offered his resignation yesterday, while at the same time offering to stay if needed. With France's far-left coalition, known as the New Popular Front, now holding the most seats, the group is now pushing Macron for the first chance to try to form a government. But so far, Macron has warned that the coalition's leftist programs could create major problems for the country's economy. Meanwhile, Macron himself, he still has 3 more years left in his presidential term.
Meanwhile, in Asia, China's lack of transparency on COVID-19 cost the U.S. $18 trillion. That report comes from the Heritage Foundation, which commissioned Republicans and Democrats to analyze all evidence. The group believes the virus began as an outbreak from the Wuhan lab, which China purposely covered up. The cost to America was great, with more than 1 million deaths. According to the commission's estimates, the loss of lives, chronic conditions, and other factors cost the U.S. 13% of its wealth. They recommend that Congress narrowly rewrite the law that shields foreign governments from lawsuits to include pandemics. They said, quote, "Inaction incentivizes the CCP only to persist in its non-transparent, non-cooperative, and even hostile behavior." All right, and up next, we'll get the updates on Hurricane Beryl, as nearly 3 million people are currently without power. But first, let's go to Seth Dinsky for a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In history, we often tend to remember political figures, and historical figures for that matter, by their physical features. So we remember Abe Lincoln's height, for instance, or Napoleon's lack thereof. Now, sometimes figures in history are literally named for their physical appearances, like the Frankish king and Holy Roman Emperor Charles the Fat. In this episode, let's explore a man who has been remembered in the history books for his physique, and like the aforementioned Carolingian ruler, he was exceptionally large. He would serve as the 27th President of the United States, William Howard Taft. Taft was born in 1857, too young to serve in the Civil War, much like his predecessor, Teddy Roosevelt. Taft was a skilled lawyer, and this would serve as a foreshadowing of perhaps his most famous service to his country late in his life, and it wasn't the presidency. Taft was also a politician, and he rose in the ranks in both the McKinley and Roosevelt administrations. He became the leading Republican man in the 1908 election, in which he defeated Democratic nominee William Jennings Bryant. Now, Taft was jovial and soft-spoken, which some historians argue did not serve him well in politics. In fact, he was once quoted as saying that his electoral campaign of 1908 was one of the most uncomfortable 4 months of my life. While not accomplishing much in terms of notoriety during his 4 years in the office, he served as a capable and competent leader of the free world. His leadership style was far softer than his bold, trailblazing predecessor, so he's most famous not so much for his political achievements in office, but for his interesting historical tidbits. Among these are the one we mentioned earlier, his size. He was by far the heaviest man to ever serve in the White House, weighing in around 350 pounds and earning him the nickname Big Bill. From his large size, a popular legend arose that he once got stuck in the White House bathtub. Now, there's not much evidence for this ever happening, but he did indeed have a much larger bathtub installed at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to prevent such an occurrence from ever happening to him. Now, Taft's accomplishments for which he was most proud would come later in his life, long after his presidency ended. In 1921, he would serve as the 10th Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court up until his death in 1930, and he was personally far more proud of this role than he was as president. To this day, he is the only man in American history to serve as both Commander-in-Chief and Supreme Court Chief Justice. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
On the day I found I was pregnant, I was full of emotions, and I just was so overwhelmed, and I don't know if I'm ready for this huge, life-altering, changing commitment. I had individuals around me not wanting me to have this child. And somehow, I was driving, and I saw the Women's Help Center sign, and I immediately turned in. That just took relief off of me, and I was like, you know what? It's gonna be okay. They gave me the confidence and the support that I needed to be able to go out and face the world. First time I held Finnegan, I just lit up with joy. I was so excited. This little boy that I had in my life, he is loving and generous. Watching him just grow and flourish into this incredible human being has just been so rewarding and so uplifting. Looking back, I don't know what I would do without him, because I needed him more than I think he needed me.
Do you know what you are supporting when you purchase mutual funds and stocks? Think about it. When you invest in a company, you make a decision to support the things that that company supports. And it may not be things that you agree with. Financial Issues is a ministry teaching people like you how to invest biblically, responsibly, keeping your investments clear of companies that may support an ungodly agenda. Learn more by going to financialissues.org. Financialissues.org.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, let's go to a bit of a weather update from yesterday. Hurricane Beryl landed in parts of Texas, knocking out power to roughly 3 million homes and businesses. Officials warned that it would likely take several days to return power to residents affected by the Category 1 hurricane. Fortunately for Texas residents, Beryl was quickly downgraded to a tropical storm and later a tropical depression. Officials noted that it had severely weakened from the Category 5 hurricane that completely destroyed parts of Mexico and the Caribbean over the weekend. Despite the easing of the weather, officials noted that at least 4 people were killed in Texas and Louisiana. Recovery efforts are currently being overseen by Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who is the acting governor while Greg Abbott is out of the country. The National Hurricane Center has warned that Beryl is likely to tear through several more states over the coming days.
And now for a quick cultural update where the fallout continues from those anti-Israel protests on campuses, where multiple deans now at Columbia University in particular are now under the gun for sharing allegedly anti-Semitic text messages. Former Dean of Undergraduate Student Life, Kristen Crom, as well as former Vice Dean and Chief Administrative Officer Susan Chang, along with former Associate Dean of Student and Family Support, Matthew Patashnik, they have all been indefinitely suspended by the university. The three of them were caught sharing mocking text messages about the school's Jewish Life on Campus event, where speakers discussed the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. In their text exchanges, the deans dismissed the speakers' concerns, saying they were using the event for fundraising potential. Columbia's president, meanwhile, said the messages touched on what she called anti-Semitic tropes, describing them as both unacceptable and deeply upsetting.
Elsewhere in culture, several attorney generals are raising concerns over public school trends that seek to transition students' gender without parental consent. Yesterday, Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares filed an amicus brief asking the Supreme Court to weigh in on a case regarding public schools transitioning kids without parental knowledge or consent. He filed the brief with AGs from 15 other states. The case refers to a 2020 Wisconsin school district decision that encouraged students to socially transition, while it also trained administrators to share information on medical and surgical transition as well. Both the district and appellate court, have rejected legal complaints coming from parents, saying that they lacked standing to bring federal claims. But Miyares disagrees. He said in a statement, quote, "It is essential that schools work with parents, not against them, to support a child's well-being." He added that parents have the right to be involved in major decisions affecting their children's lives.
And some more legal updates here. Boeing has now apparently agreed to plead guilty to criminal fraud charges, as the DOJ made that announcement this week after saying it would prosecute the company over 2 jet crashes that killed nearly 350 people. Prosecutors reportedly gave Boeing a choice between entering a guilty plea and paying a $243 million fine or going to trial. Prosecutors alleged Boeing lied to federal regulators who approved the defective 737 MAX jet lines, as well as the pilot training requirements for them. And in addition to the fine, Boeing is also now required to invest nearly $455 million in new compliance and safety programs.
And lastly, on a lighter note, 4th of July holiday travel broke records this year. The TSA reports that more than 3 million people were screened at airports on Sunday. This broke a June 23rd record when 2.99 million people chose to fly to their destinations. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said in a statement that TSA staff checked 35 passengers every second while demonstrating unwavering professionalism and respect for travelers during the intensely busy holiday weekend. He called TSA's overall efforts an extraordinary achievement. The Associated Press reports that TSA's 8 out of 10 busiest travel days happened this year, but travel costs are still high post-pandemic, although prices have somewhat decreased for airfare and hotel stays this year.
What was that, 35 people per second?
Per second,
that is
that's
astonishing.
Right.
I can't even wrap my mind around that.
Right.
Good job.
Exactly, yeah. Well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for more updates, you can also download the FISM app so you can take our news wherever you go. Thanks so much. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night with more news.